I spend a lot of time thinking about who I am, how I'm feeling, and why I feel that way. Now, is this because I'm a writer, and like many authors, I base my writing on my own experience? Or is it perhaps I'm about to graduate, and I'm staring down the impending doom of having to adult? Or is it perhaps my anxiety, playing games with my emotions? You can take your pick. Maybe it's all three. Personally, though, I largely attribute my habitual self-reflection to the many years I spent lying to myself about my sexuality. You see, I was a little Filipino boy who went to a private Catholic school from pre-K till 8th grade. This meant that culturally, socially, and religiously, heteronormativity defined much of my childhood. Pretty much everyone I knew back then identified as straight, and I, as children so often do, wanted to fit in to be like everybody else. So I decided that I was straight too. Then I went to my high school in Virginia Beach, Virginia, public high school to be specific, and once I got there, first thing I did, joined the show choir. Next, did the musical, and then started writing and performing in plays. And if you can believe it, while doing all of those very artsy things, I met and made friends with so many queer people. And it was that exposure to the queer community, seeing all of my new friends be so open and honest about who they were, that made me realize that I don't have to fit in with everybody else. Engaging with people outside of the community I grew up in helped me figure out who I am. That being that I'm gay, in case that wasn't obvious. Because it was out there where all the queer people were, or at least the ones that were out at the time. Because that's what happens when you go beyond your borders. You meet people and you go through things that help you learn more about who you really are. But when I say go beyond your borders, I don't just mean go to any old place you've never been to before. I've personally never eaten at a Tudor's Biscuit World. But I doubt going there will spark the next gay awakening level event of my life. No matter how much the locals insist that I try it before I graduate. Now, what I mean is that when you engage in experiences and perspectives that are meaningfully different from what you're used to, you have the opportunity to get to know yourself a little better. It was the fact that there were so many more openly queer people in my high school compared to my Catholic school that helped me realize my sexuality, not the fact that I just moved to a new school. Getting to know yourself better, though, isn't just limited to who you are at that present moment. You might have noticed that I said I went to high school back in Virginia Beach, Virginia. However, I'm currently presenting at TEDxMarshallU, which, in case you missed the sign on the way here, is in the city of Huntington, West Virginia. West Virginia and Virginia, for you international members of the audience, are completely different places, totally different states. The cities of Huntington and Virginia Beach alone have a ton of differences. Back in Virginia Beach, for instance, there are so many Filipinos in the area that we have a whole Philippine cultural center in the city. Meanwhile, here in Huntington, I can count on maybe 2 hands the number of Filipinos that I've met since coming here. Put another way, I am quite separated from my culture and people like me while I am here. However, that separation has made me want to engage with my heritage more than ever before because I've enjoyed so much sharing it with other people and my friends here. I don't profess to cook the best chicken adobo in the world, but I have never brought home leftovers whenever I've made adobo for Thanksgiving celebrations with my friends. So I'm fairly confident that they enjoy when I make it. And knowing that makes me want to cook even more Filipino dishes so I can make those for my friends and also for my meal prep. Does that conveniently double as a coping mechanism for being so far away from my culture and my people? Yeah, it does. It is uncomfortable and lonely sometimes to be somewhere where I am so clearly in the minority. But despite that, after being here for so long, I am now also so much more aware of the power and the passion that I have for sharing my culture and even other facets of my identity with other people. And that awareness has been extremely helpful as I've been deciding what I'm going to do after I graduate and have to adult. Going beyond your borders may make you feel uncomfortable and lonely, but those feelings are worthy prices to pay to learn more about not only who you are, but who you want to be. But there's more to learn about than just yourself way out there, because sometimes you'll be like me a few years ago. getting ready to move into the dorms here at Marshall, thinking to myself, I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm getting myself into. I've seen movies, I know what college is like, and I know what West Virginians are like. I know all about West Virginians. Except, being a city boy from regular, not West Virginia, the dominant narrative about this state that I heard growing up was full of all the stereotypes you'd expect. And while sometimes I'd hear about how kind and generous West Virginians could be, those stories were always overshadowed by warnings about how they could also be backwards and closed-minded and prejudiced, particularly against people that look and sound like me. So I came here my freshman year assuming that I'd have to be on my guard, at least a little, all of the time. However, I was wrong. Yes, there are people here who are closed-minded and prejudiced, but one, those people are literally everywhere else too. And two, the existence of those kinds of people here does not mean that there aren't also people here who are more than willing to not just welcome, but love and celebrate a gay Filipino boy from out of state. People I don't have to be on my guard around at all. I don't know if I ever would have felt the depths of West Virginian and more broadly Appalachian kindness had I not left Virginia Beach. Sometimes, going beyond your borders can be literal state borders, and even if it isn't, going out there helps you to learn about other people just as much as it helps you learn about who you are and who you want to be. Crossing those borders, though, doesn't mean you can't ever go back to where you're from or where you're comfortable. Sometimes, by going back, you realize you have a better understanding of where you're from than before you left. That's what happened to me, at least, when I came back here after studying abroad in Glasgow, Scotland. Now, I know, I probably sound like one of those students who cannot stop talking about when he studied abroad. But it's just, I learned so much. And I didn't just learn a bunch of academic things about VR and vaccines and art history and everything else under the program that I was in. And I didn't just learn about Scottish culture and politics and history either. I learned, albeit indirectly, about all of those things in the United States too. Because on this side of the pond, we also have VR and vaccines and art and culture and history and politics and so many other things that, yes, are different from the Scots, but are also more similar than you might expect. Comparing them then can lead to some really interesting revelations. Take Glasgow and Huntington. Both cities have endured periods of economic decline, and both have worked hard to bounce back from those. For Glasgow specifically, some of the major players in its economic revival are its many universities that attract and train talent in growing industries like business and computer science. And you know where else has at least one university that's attracting and training talent in growing industries? Huntington. What with Marshall's recently opened Brad D. Smith Center for Business and Innovation and its up-and-coming cybersecurity building. When I first heard about these developments for Marshall, I thought that they were purely aimed at producing more business graduates and cybersecurity graduates. With what I know about Glasgow, though, I can see now how these are steps Marshall is taking to not just contribute to Huntington's economy, but West Virginia's as a whole. I had, rather naively in hindsight, assumed that the sole function of higher education institutions was just to educate people. But after going and seeing how the universities in Glasgow benefit their city, I can better appreciate now the work that not just Marshall, but higher education in general does for a community. Because sometimes you need to see familiar concepts in different contexts to really get to know them. You don't always know what you don't know about yourself, about other people, and even about the way the world works. But going beyond your borders forces you to engage with those things in new ways, to learn about and better understand them. For me, those newfound understandings have helped me become a better person than who I might have been if I hadn't gone beyond my borders. And I don't just mean that I'm a better person now because I've traveled so much. I know up until this point, I've mostly talked about going beyond your borders as the physical act of going to different places. And while there is a physical aspect to the beyonding of your border, you don't always have to use your feet to actually just step outside of your borders. Every time I've tried something different, I've gone beyond my borders. I call myself a writer, but I actually have a double major in computer science and creative writing. Except up until recently, you probably would have assumed I was majoring in journalism because I spent the last 3 years working for the student paper as an editor. I hadn't even done journalism before coming to college, just like I hadn't done musical theater before going into high school. But I tried all of those things anyways. And all of those very different experiences have given me skills and knowledge that benefit me almost every day. Music helps me connect with my emotions and my friends, be it on stage, in the car, at the gym, wherever. Meanwhile, my good old editor eyes come in handy every time I need to read the news as I scan for ways in which an article might be biased. As for my computer science major, beyond just career development, semesters of staring at coding problems have hardwired my brain to break down real-life situations into their smallest parts and analyze how to best approach them in the most effective manner. And my training as a writer helped me to create this talk, not just in the actual writing of it, but in the teaching me how to be vulnerable enough to show you all the assumptions that I've had over the years, and then admit to you that I was wrong. Because if I was unable to admit those wrongs, even just in general, I could still be ignorant to the importance of higher education in the world. I could still be holding on to those stereotypes I grew up hearing about West Virginia. I could still be blind to the power of sharing with others your culture and identity. I could still be trying to convince myself that I'm straight. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be someone who doesn't know who he is, who doesn't understand other people, who doesn't see how the world around him works. So, I am going to keep going beyond my borders because that is the most meaningful way I know how to become the best version of who I want to be. And I hope you'll all do the same and come along with me. Thank you.